Ken has told me that it was a result of his having made the film on Huey Long, and Robert Penn Warren, of course, was part of that. And Warren asked him what he was going to be doing next, and he said he thought he'd go into the Civil War. And Warren thought that was an idea, a good one, and called him on the telephone afterwards and told him that he should see me and talk to me about it. And Ken later saw Walker Percy down in Louisiana, and Walker called me to say that Ken was there and wanted to come up. Would it be all right? I said, yeah, and that's how I met him. He looked so very young to me. I was surprised that anybody that young could be making a film. I thought he was about 22. I'd seen the Huey Long, and I may have seen Brooklyn Bridge. I think I had. And I admired his work on that, and that was one of the things that made me willing to see him, talk with him. I think there were probably two or three of them here at the house, and we also went to the battlefield at Shiloh, and we went down to Vicksburg, and there was a little filming in both of those, but most of it was done right here. And it was perhaps, I'm guessing, a couple of hours on film, maybe 3 hours as much. It was a lot of it, short segments. None of it was rehearsed. Ken didn't tell me what he was going to ask me, and I didn't make any suggestions about what he might ask me or what my answers might be. And I think a certain informality resulted from that in a good way. It was up to him, after having all these snippets and discussions and things, to put them together in the order in which he finally wound up with. He might be talking about Stonewall Jackson at one minute and Bedford Forrest the next, and they were not necessarily together. He put them where they belonged in the film. That was the best thing about the film, to my mind, from the very start. What Ken did was send, maybe 12 historians a prospective narration script, seeing what we thought of it. And then he asked us to meet in Washington. We all sat around a large table in some hotel there and went through the script. And there was scarcely a thing that could come up about the war that there wouldn't be 2 or 3 men around that table who knew a great deal about it. And the most encouraging thing, I think, to all of us was the minute that Ken saw there was some doubt historically about a scene, he was willing to drop it, no matter how much dramatic value it had. He realized that the closer he got to the truth, the better the film would be. You can't ever really get to the truth, but the closer you come, the better it'll be. I thought that it came off in a good dramatic way. It seemed to me to perhaps lean a little heavily on slavery as the biggest problem of the war, which I don't think it was, especially to the people who fought it. The dramatic value of pictures had so much to do with the way he told the story. It had the virtue of not neglecting the Western campaigns, but he had so much more pictures of the Eastern campaigns that he still leaned in that way a good deal more than I think it should for a true history of the Civil War. I think the main reason it was so successful is a combination of Ken's skill in making it and the subject itself. The Civil War is a subject that would be absolutely fascinating to any American. Whether his forebears fought in it or not, it is a tremendously dramatic thing, and therefore that part of it carries it over to the public. We expected that it would be well received, but no one, including Ken himself, had no idea that it was going to be the big thing it was on PBS. Incidentally, I don't think he could have made it anywhere but on PBS. I don't think anyone else would have given him the time. It affected me enormously. I'd always stayed out of any kind of spotlight. I never went to New York when any of my novels were published, or when the war itself was published. I never hit the road advertising it the way writers do. I've always been a private sort of person. And then this thing burst on television. And on one of the sequences I happened to mention here in Memphis. And I'm so bullheaded I never would take my name out of the phone book, and the phone started ringing. And for the next 4 or 5 years especially, it kept ringing. And they revive this thing every now and then, and when it does in various parts of the country, the phone starts ringing again. It's distracting and damnable at times, and yet it has a pleasant aspect to it of knowing that people like what you're doing. So it's difficult to say whether I'm against it or for it. People have a funny reaction to seeing someone that they've seen on television. I had it myself. I was walking on 44th Street, walking west from Fifth Avenue over to Madison, and I saw this man coming toward me, and I was thoroughly familiar with him. I thought even I might have roomed with him in college or something. He was so familiar, very familiar, but I couldn't think of his name, and here we are fixing to meet, and I figured he's going to recognize me since I know him so well. And as we got closer, I was prepared to shake hands and try to remember his name still, never could. And as we got closer, I was looking at him, and he looked at me in a sort of annoyed way and went on past. And that was when I realized it was Chet Huntley. But he's not supposed to be on the street. He's supposed to be in this little box. And I get some of that at the same time. I think that it really did communicate a feeling because of its use of the old pictures. It really did communicate a feeling of what the people at that time went through in that horrendous struggle. You have to remember, in the Confederate Army, at least 1 out of 4 men was a casualty. In the Northern Army, 1 out of 10 were a casualty. I remember things like the camera looking at the dead on the field at Cold Harbor in various places, or at Sharpsburg. There was something very dramatic and powerful about the dead, dead horses as well as men. Something about seeing the cost of war demonstrated by the obvious agony of which those people died, and the uselessness of it. There were 1,095,000 casualties in that war, and it brings it home to you when you see the mangled dead on the field. Ken knew the value of small things, bringing you close to the bone on what's happening. It could be almost nothing, but if it had a certain poignancy to it, it brought it home to you. And Ken has an ear and an eye for that kind of thing. His picking of the two places, one up in Maine, the other in Middle Tennessee, as being typical of the two sides, was a good choice. For example, it brought out a strong sense of the division and yet the kinship. It was a good thing to use those two places. He quoted frequently from one of my favorite books of the Civil War. It's Company H, A Sideshow, The Big Show by Sam Watkins. That's a private soldier in the Confederate Army. His reminiscences of the war, little things from that are very, very lively. They live very close to life in a sense of knowing what was happening. If you were one of a group of, say, 12 men in a squad, and you went through 4 years of war in which you probably lost 7 of them, it brought it home to you in a very strong way. And when you got back home again, those of you who survived had been through things together that meant a great deal to you. There was also, whether Northern or Southern, there was a sense of having taken part in something that defined this country. I've often said that the Civil War is what defined us. The Revolution set us free, but the Civil War decided what kind of country we were going to be, and these men were very much aware of the fact that they had been involved in that decision, whether they won or lost. And it was evocative for them. I think that the film will remain a document of considerable value after we're all gone. I think that it was close enough to the war to partake of the authenticity, and far enough from the war to allow a level judgment of what went on. So that it was 1990 was probably a good time to show that, and as he did from 85 to 90 was a good time to make it. And I don't think that time will come again. I don't think we can get as close to it as he was then. And I'm not sure we're going to be any more dispassionate with more passing of time.